this episode, we have Tina Motley, the founder and CEO of Fig Tree Therapy. Tina has become a friend of mine over the years and has grown a company in the last 10 plus years from zero to, I think, close to 20 employees. She is the longest tenured entrepreneur on this season, and I thought she would have some interesting perspectives on that. But also, the reason she started Fig Tree Therapy was around a problem that she saw when she was a counselor or a mental health counselor. She saw a problem and then thought it could be done better, and she started a company. So tune in and hope you enjoy. Well, Tina, thank you so much for being on the show, and I am excited to have you, and I know a lot of people listening will be excited to hear what you have to say.
Okay. Thank you, Christian.
Yeah. So what I thought was, I want to talk a little bit about you at first, as far as kind of what got you in the field, being a mental health therapist. And then maybe we can transition to what you're doing and then why you started the company. So maybe from the start, if you can just talk about like your current path, I guess career-wise.
Like how I got here?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I got a master's in social work from VCU, graduated in 2002. Always been interested in mental health, had a lot of childhood anxiety, had my own struggles with depression. And so fascinated by how you treat that and what that looks like. And so after I got a master's, actually, I was mugged in the city.
Gosh.
Yeah. And so I'd had a series of events happen, and my boss at the time encouraged me to get EMDR therapy. Changed my life completely.
And that stands for?
Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so I knew from then on that's what I wanted to do. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's a powerful treatment for trauma. And it's effective. And so I'm now a consultant and actually am able to provide brand new trainees with the supervision to become certified.
That's awesome.
And so that was big.
Was that in Richmond?
Yes.
That situation? Wow.
Yes.
Jeez, our city too. Gosh, you think you know people.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an experience.
Well, I mean, it sounds like from that experience, you took that, I guess, took something really negative and made it a positive force.
For sure.
Right? And you were like, I went through this and I want to help people who have been through similar experiences or whatever it might be. So from that experience, I mean, did you just know immediately, like, I'm going to go into this field?
I always knew I wanted to be in private practice.
Okay.
I always wanted...
On the mental health therapy side?
Exactly,
Gotcha.
On the mental health therapy side. And I just got that wonderful advice to go the social work direction.
Okay.
But now I'm going to get a PhD in psychology. So I'll end up at my first goal. But it's really what I needed to get where I wanted to be.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you went to school for it? As far as master's in social work?
Master's in social work, which enables you to go on and get licensed and then be able to insurance panel and provide services on a professional end.
Got you. That's awesome. And you went to VCU?
I did.
Here? Gotcha. Cool.
I did.
So tell me about when you graduated from VCU, you had this, these experiences happen, and then I imagine you're working for a couple different companies before you ended up starting Fig Tree Therapies to what it is today.
Sure. Yeah. So I eventually got licensed in 2009. And at the time, community mental health was this big buzz, particularly here. And so I had written on my policies to open up a community mental health company. But that happened secondarily. It wasn't necessarily the plan. But anyway, so to kind of go back a little bit. So I had gone through the EMDR therapy, but at the time I was not a Christian. Okay.
And this was what period of life or what period?
This was 2003.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so EMDR was amazing, and it definitely helped with the trauma symptoms. But that same year, I actually became a Christian, and so I was able to get, I would say, full healing.
Yeah.
And so opening Fig Tree to me was understanding that we have a spirit, a body, and a soul, and our soul still needs healing, even when we have spiritual healing and vice versa. And so being able to integrate the two was my big goal and dream. And so while we understand the value of science and empirically based interventions to be able to integrate Christian principles with that
Absolutely.
is what we stand for.
So that was back in 2003. You kind of had, I guess, is that the part in your life where, I guess, from a Christianity standpoint, you started pursuing that as well?
Definitely.
Okay, gotcha. And then I imagine, so you started Fig Tree in 2012. And so from 2003 to 2012, you had this idea that you wanted to do these specific treatments. And then obviously with the whole Christianity route, I know we talk about a lot, but talk to me about the period between 2003 and 2012, and then what led you to start Fig Tree?
Yeah, great question. So I contracted with a lot of different companies, community mental health companies, and then people could open it without any background in mental health. And so I watched a lot
Really?
Yeah, a little scary. So I watched a lot of really unethical behaviors. And I just wanted to do it right. I just wanted to do it ethically. I wanted to do it where, you put your client first and not the money first, because, the money follows, right? Yeah. So that drove me a lot to want to do my own thing, was just to do it to honor God, you know? So here we are.
Yeah. So talk to me about the exact moment. Like, for example, in 2012, you're working for...
So I was working for probably I was contracting for multiple companies.
So essentially you were, kind of running
contractor.
your own business, but not at the same time.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So you kind of were, I guess, quote unquote, dipping your toe in the water of entrepreneurship. Yeah. And then what was the moment where you go, okay, I'm opening Fig Tree Therapies up? Yeah.
So I wish it was a better story than it is, Christian, but I was working for a company, and they were making money off my license, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, why am I not doing this myself? And so that moment, I decided I'm going to do this myself. Yeah. And within a month, I had opened up my own company. So no business plan, never borrowed money, not really sure what I was doing, but I'm a risk taker. Yeah. And so I just jumped, and it's just grown. Every year it's grown. Yeah. It's been a wild ride and a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me when people talk about the jump, because recently I made a jump myself, right? And it was like, I'm sure you look back and you're like, I didn't know all of these things. Like when you jumped, you were like, I just want to do, treatment. I want to be a mental health therapist, but I didn't know I needed to worry about marketing and sales, and like, how am I going to make money? Yeah. Right? It's a very risky thing. And I think a lot of people listening are either have jumped or are thinking about jumping. So walk me through like the feelings of taking the jump, because for me, I'll give you an example. I was so excited to take the jump, and I'm so grateful I did. Yeah. But it's been even in the last 6 months, it's been a lot longer of a road than anticipated. So talk to me about the feelings like when you took that jump. I mean, it had to be scary.
Oh, for sure. But like you, it's exciting, it's scary, and you figure it out, right? Like, I remember what am I going to do for Mark? I have no business background, zero, right? I don't even know if I'd seen a spreadsheet before I had opened my
Shark Tank?
Nothing, right? So I'm like, what am I doing? And I back then mail was more, people actually read their mail probably a little more than now.
What's that?
So right, not electronic.
Okay.
And I remember buying mail lists and mailing mass letters to people, creating my own little postcards. I'd go in Walmart parking lot and put them on people's cars. Like I just got super creative, you know. I really hit churches. That sounds terrible, but I sent a lot of information to local churches and.
Sure.
But I would say honestly, it's my clients are my biggest marketing. Honestly. I mean, still today. Yeah. It's who tells who tells who. And so that goes back to, serve your clients well and the rest follows.
Yeah. So back in 2012, when you had no clients, where did you find the first clients, and where did they, I guess, quote unquote, come from? Was it personal relationships? Was it marketing? Was it strategy?
Probably a combination of all.
Okay.
So when you are paneled with insurances, you go on their little list of providers. So some people found me that way. And to be honest, Christian, I don't know where a lot of people found me or how. I had been out there for a minute, so I had clients from different companies that would call and come in. But once it hit. And I really don't know. I mean, my website was huge. I think having a website was big then and still is now. But yeah, I mean, if I didn't have the skills to analyze that at the time, wish I had of, but I'm just like thankful I had clients.
Right. Sure.
So I was a foster parent for 4 years probably before I opened Fig Tree. But yeah, I had kids at home for the first year of doing this.
Gotcha.
Which was really stressful. The first year to me was hands down the hardest.
Yeah.
Because I was balancing so many things.
How'd you balance it?
Probably not well, you know. You do what you have to do. You know what I mean? Like my kids spent a lot of time at the office, you know. Had to hire a lot of people. Fortunately, I had really good friends at the time that would help me take care of my kids. But that, you know, I had came to a place where I had to make a choice. I'm going to be a foster parent or I'm going to own a business.
I was about to say, when was that?
Yeah. That first year I did both and I was so burnt out. And so the kids that I had at the time transitioned out and that was it for foster care. However, they're all still in my life. So it never ends.
Right.
But yeah, that was a difficult choice because I also felt called to do that, you know, but to everything a season, you know?
Right. I feel like that year, though, had to be obviously a difficult year, but in many different aspects, right? I mean, you're trying to build this baby, right? This company, while, you know, having, you know, family or kids to take care of. Like how, because we talk about it all the time, how do you prioritize one or the other? You know, how do you prioritize the business? Because you need to obviously grow this, make money, but obviously you want to spend time with kids and do different things. So how did you prioritize, especially in that first year, how did you prioritize these different things in your life?
Yeah. So I am really tight with my family and I have really good friends and I love to exercise. So, I mean, you know, balancing all of that, but I have found that you need all of it. If I don't exercise, I'm not mentally that healthy. If I don't socialize, same thing. So you have to prioritize.
Yeah.
But I will also say I don't stop working really. Like, you know, like I'm going to answer an email here and there or take a phone call. You know, like some people are like, okay, 5 o'clock it's done. It's my family time. I just don't operate that way. But, you know, some people do.
Right.
You know,
it's kind of, I think Jeff Bezos said something similar. He was like, it's just a circle.
Yeah.
And like everything feeds each other. So like, that's why I imagine you probably don't have an issue with like doing something personal at 11 a.m.
Right.
Right? Or doing something personal with kids or with something you're passionate about during the day because you're like, I'm going to make it up later.
Yeah.
So I've heard people that think of it kind of like that, kind of like a circle.
Absolutely.
Where it's like, you know, I'm awake for 16 hours a day and then all of this gets accomplished, but not necessarily 9 to 5 and then 5 to 9.
Exactly.
And that type of stuff.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
So I can be a little ADD, right? So I might like, you know, do a project and then go take a run and then come back and do another project. So, I mean, I think it's all personality based, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a whole nother can of worms in itself, work-life balance and how you don't get burnt out and, and that type of thing. But I really, especially with this series, I really want to focus on the first 2 years because obviously from 0 to 100,000. So when did you hit that quote unquote $100,000 point?
When?
Yeah.
You know, that's what I had to ask my accountant. I'm like, hey, when, we were estimating, he doesn't have my first 6 months, but by a year and a half, we had hit that. And I had brought on a student. So I started taking students.
Yep.
Particularly with my field, I can do that. And it's free help, but I paid them, you know, I made it a win-win situation. But they would do their internships with me and they would answer the phones and they would do, you know, administrative tasks for me and get their clinical hours. And so, yeah, that was key.
Yeah. When did you hire your first quote unquote student and what was that like?
Yeah, actually I had to reach out and figure that out. So my first student I hired. So she came on as an intern, and then she worked for me for quite a while until she moved on. And then that became the trend. You know, I would get more students and then hire them on and train them up.
Almost like a program, like training, and then once they graduated, they came to work for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Still do a little bit of that.
Yeah. But going through that program, hiring the first student had to be obviously an unknown experience. You've never owned a company, and then you've never had an employee, quote unquote.
Yes.
How, first of all, why did you hire that first employee? First part. And then second, how did you deal with it and how did you structure it and learn how to be a quote unquote leader at that point?
Yeah. So fortunately, my first student was just an amazing person, still friends to this day. And she was really solid and trustworthy, you know? And so when her internship came to an end and I didn't want her to leave, so I offered her a paid position. But you know, when you move into that, you have to understand W-2 versus contractors. I mean, it's a whole new avenue to pursue.
Yeah.
But I've always tried to treat people well. I pay people well. Yeah. So she stayed. She stuck around for a while.
Yeah. Hey, that's just a lot in and of itself.
Yes.
So you hired the first employee. Was it first year or was it second year?
Probably a little, probably a year and a half, maybe.
Okay. You're like, hey,
Yeah.
I need some help now.
Yes. The phones were ringing and I just didn't have the energy for all of it.
Sure.
So
Thanks for pulling you in different directions.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you end up hiring that, and then it sounds like you hired that kind of became a program. Was it a program that you replicated, or was it a program that you kind of designed?
Probably designed. I wasn't modeling off of anyone.
Gotcha.
You know, it just continually worked for me and them. I tried to make it like most interns don't get paid. And so I figured if I offer you money, maybe it'll be an incentive. But, you know, learning to lead people, I would say has been the biggest challenge for me.
Come?
People, we're complicated.
Yeah, we
you know
are.
what I mean?
I'm complicated.
Yeah, I'm complicated. You know, first of all, I'm a woman, right? I tend to be emotional.
Yeah.
And so learning not to react in emotion has been a challenge.
Like
But
when people leave or when...
conflict,
Okay.
you know, conflict or inappropriate behavior or what I would have considered, you know, I've had to kind of step back a little. But I have a super smart and humble father. And so he would balance me a lot.
Gotcha.
So let's put it that way.
Gotcha.
I think the value when you're a female business owner is to have some strong men in your life.
Sure.
Because we need both.
Yeah.
You need the male perspective. And now I have some strong leaders in the company that are men. But I would say that's been my challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Emotional reactivity.
Right. Just learning to navigate it. And I was going to ask, as far as advisors circle, who you surrounded yourself with.
Huge.
Obviously, you said your dad is a huge advisor, role model, which is awesome. I definitely bounced some ideas off my dad as well. But as far as being a new entrepreneur and either bouncing ideas off of people or just being like, do you know what I'm going through?
Yeah.
That type of thing. How did you surround yourself with different entrepreneurs at the time, or like when first year or two in business, what was your circle like? Quote unquote?
Yeah. No, I don't even think I had entrepreneurs in my life. I had really strong friendships. And like I said, very supportive family. Probably wouldn't have had the courage to do this without that. But yeah, no, I would just pick up people along the way. I don't have a problem calling people and saying, hey, can you explain this to me?
Right.
You know, like my accountant, I'm like, talk to me like I'm stupid. Just explain
Talk to me like I'm in second grade.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
So it's reaching out. It's being able to say, I need help. I don't get this, you know?
That's good.
Humility.
So as far as giving people advice, right? Because everyone needs advice. I need advice.
Sure.
Obviously you talked about humility, but as an aspiring entrepreneur or someone who wants to be an entrepreneur or is a new entrepreneur, take me back to 2012, 2013, and what advice you would give yourself during that time period.
Yeah. You know, several things, but I think first is you can't be afraid to fail, you know, and to keep trying new things, creativity, get creative, right? Creative problem solving. And again, I've said it already, but honor God and do it right. You know, I just think having ethical business practices and treating my team, I mean, they matter to me. They're valuable to me. They're not just employees. That's been a huge, I think, learning curve is learning how to create an environment where it's mutual.
Right.
Everybody's winning.
Yeah.
Because your team is you, right? And so encouraging them and building them up and being fair with money and providing opportunities for growth.
Yeah. And as far as the mindset or the emotional standpoint, because especially when you jump, it is such a journey right? Navigating these waters. And so like, I think a lot of people, and I even tell people like, don't be afraid of failure. But when you hit that failure, right? Maybe you're 6 months in and you go, I don't know if I can do this. Like mindset wise, I know you're a big mindset person. Like what is a good mindset you can have as an entrepreneur, especially starting out?
I think to be passionate about what you're doing, I love what I do. It's not something I have to muster up. And so when you really feel strongly about it, you figure out how to do it, And again, I would say knowing when you need advice, knowing when you need to reach out.
Have the humility, kind of like you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Because it's going to happen. I mean,
sure.
It's the failure's going to happen.
Yes.
It's just like the mindset around not letting that failure get too much in your own head.
That's right.
Right. And not letting that overcome the passion and not letting that overcome like the good that and the value you think you can bring.
Right.
I'm working through myself. That's why it's so fresh for me right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really like to know, especially for young entrepreneurs and people going through it, what is the first time or the first win where you go, I made it? Or maybe not made it, but maybe you signed like your 5th client, right? And you're like, this is legit. Yeah. Talk to me like about the first win or the first kind of time in your company's life where you're like, this is it. This is legit.
It. Yeah. So I had told you that I had written policies for a community mental health company. So I ended up opening the private practice first. And when you have a community mental health, which has had a pretty shady reputation, and I never wanted to really participate in that. So I had I'd been gotten licensed for that company. And you have to have a client within the first year or you lose your license.
Got it.
And I didn't have one. And I was knocking on the end of that door and end of that year. And my licensing specialist called. He's like, Tina, you have to get a client. I'm like, I'm not marketing it. If they come, they come. I mean, I had spent a long time writing these policies. Now, my other company was working at that point.
Sure.
So I think 2 weeks before that deadline, someone called and it was a community mental health client. And I just made it. I was like, okay, this is.
Made it past the first year, right?
Yes.
Because that was the first 12 months.
Yes.
That had, I mean,
yes.
That had to involve a lot of prayer, of course, but a lot of like you're almost a year into it, and like I said, there's licensing criteria.
Yeah.
And you're like, I mean, probably even 8-12 weeks before, you're probably thinking like, what do I do?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, again, I had the other company, but how it all went is that community mental health ended up being what allowed me the finances to grow the other company, which is what I operate now. I closed that one a few years ago.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha.
So it was just, I don't know that I would be where I am today had that second company not flourished, because that allowed me to have the money to hire administrators, to hire all of the internal staff that I needed.
Yeah.
But hey, it was touch and go. I didn't know if it was going to happen.
Yeah.
It was just a wild moment. I'm like,
yeah, there it is. I mean, I really feel like so much of this journey, Tina, is about mindset and perspective, right? And it's like, how can I serve people better, but also just have a better mindset overall.
Yeah.
Right? Because you want to grow a successful company, but you also don't want to do that at the expense of yourself or at the expense of a family and that type of thing.
Correct.
But no, all good stuff.
Yeah.
So tell me about one of the last questions I want to ask is, as we're venturing kind of from the startup to now you're 10, 11 years into it. Right. You probably look back on those days with some fondness and also like, thank God I'm not there. Thank God I'm not 2 weeks away from, potentially having a shutdown in licensing. But talk to me about how your mindset has changed from 2012 to 2023.
Yes. So I would say I'm a pretty organic leader, right? Where there's a need, and I'm going to try to meet it. And so learning, one of my team members has been here a really long time. He's like, if you don't like change, you probably shouldn't work for Tina. And so I have had to learn that not everybody likes to roll with change constantly.
Right.
And so I've had to calm some of my own. I love change. I thrive on it, but I've had to realize that's not good for my company.
Yeah.
a lot of them.
Yeah.
And so I've had to learn to listen to other people and
That's tough enough itself.
yes, when it's kind of not really what you want to do.
Right.
But yeah, so I think respecting that not everybody thinks like I do or is comfortable with the level of risk that I am. So
yeah, because like you said, you're kind of more the natural risk taker.
Yeah.
That's why you told me earlier you have all your money in crypto, which I found.
That's not true.
For those listening, that is not true. But to kind of piggyback off that point, Tina, it took me literally until 12 months ago maybe to realize, and this is kind of pathetic, but to realize like very few people think the way that you think. Right. And you can apply that to a lot of things, the full gamut, but especially kind of when we're talking about creativity and risk taking, like I had to realize, especially when talking to my friends, that like they just don't have the same mindset or outlook.
Right.
Right. And they don't have the same like feelings or emotions, or like they don't have the same thought process. And that really opened my eyes, like as I was kind of processing to start this company, was the way you think things or think of things is completely different than your best friend who just really enjoys doing a 9 to 5, and there's just nothing wrong with that, but it's just so different. And so
Absolutely.
I had to learn that too, because I was like, why don't you think this is a great idea? This is a great idea.
Right.
And they're like, shouldn't you just play golf more and just work?
Just calm down.
Yeah.
Just calm down.
It's like, yeah, exactly. So that for me anyway, that took a lot.
But I think to your point is, I have leaders in my company and I depend on them, and I don't want yes people, right? I want people to challenge me and
I think that's huge.
encourage me. And that's been huge. Huge.
We were actually talking this morning about delegation, and a leader said this, and it's actually pretty funny, but the leader goes, I intentionally don't know things on purpose, so then they have to figure it out.
Right.
And I was like, that's kind of
interesting
and kind of genius at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like they can, kind of like how you rely on some good people. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And, just to know you don't do it by yourself. Like we all have help along the way.
Yeah.
Everyone
does.
Yes.
Yeah. Especially these quote unquote overnight successes that, you see a company and they get $10 million in funding, or they sell to a major company, and you go, wow, must be nice. But then you go, wow, it took them 11 years to get from here till the point where they sold.
Right.
And I can guarantee the first 2 to 3 weren't sexy.
Right.
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 Now it is.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of sweat.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of praying.
Yes. Yes. A lot of relying, a lot of humility. Just
a lot of
being
humility.
Like, please help. Please, anybody.
Anyone hear me?
Yeah. Please, someone hear me. Well, Tina, it's been so great to have you on the show and hearing your perspective. I want to ask a couple final questions. And this question is sponsored and presented by Lighthouse Labs. What would you say your top 3 tips, or top 3, what you can relate to mindset, business acumen, that you would give either aspiring entrepreneurs or young entrepreneurs 10 years ago, essentially?
Yeah. I think first, and not to beat a dead horse, but I think you have to be willing to take a risk, and you have to jump and understand that there are probably going to be people in your life that aren't going to encourage you and may even be what seems like voices of reason. And so being very careful who you choose to discuss your ideas with, and that not everybody's going to be excited for you either. And so, being very strategic and intentional about whom you choose to bring into your inner circle, particularly when it comes to your dreams and your ideas.
That's a great number 1 too.
Yeah, that's been a big one. And I would say, again, understand you are going to work a lot, and it's probably going to be your life for a couple years at least. And there are going to be things you miss, right? You miss out on because you've had to choose to work. But it's worth it to build the foundation. And I would say reputation is everything. What the name you make for yourself. And I don't mean in terms of ambition or money, but are you trustworthy? Do you have integrity? Because that's what people, are going to
do
seek
things
you
the right
out.
way.
Right. Do things the right way.
I don't care about the Ferrari, but you're going to treat me right.
Yeah, you want the Ferrari, but you want to do it the right way, right? Like you get it because you're doing good work, not because you live for the dime,
Right. That's great. And so number 3?
Oh, have another one.
Those are great though. Those are great tips.
And I mean, I know a lot of entrepreneurs or people listening to this aren't gonna likely have maybe the same level of faith that I do, but it's having faith that it's going to work when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
I mean, I've never not paid a bill. There have been times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have the money, but it's never happened.
Right.
So, and then every risk that I would take and realize, okay, I made it, then I'll take another one.
Yeah.
So it's faith.
Yeah.
It
is. Yeah. That's great. I think those are 3 great tips, because even for me, like being vulnerable right now, I mean, it is scary to take a leap. I mean, it is. I mean, there's nothing to essentially catch you. I'm not on a roller coaster where I'm strapped in, right? There's nothing to essentially catch you, but it's just having that faith. And obviously we share a very similar faith background, but even I guess, quote unquote, if you don't, I mean, having the faith that either this business is really going to work out, or if it doesn't, it's going to be the best thing that ever happened to you.
100%. And, I always say that all the time. What's the worst? I fail. Okay.
Yeah. And then what?
And then what? I'll figure something else out.
We'll just do what we did right before.
Yes.
I mean, it's not, and that's, in my opinion, that's been my mindset, right? I mean, 6 months into a company, it's like, obviously I'm putting all my energy and effort and really hoping this company works out, because I really believe in it. I think it will. But if it doesn't, like the worst case scenario is like, I can pat myself on the back and be like, you tried, like you gave it your all. And then if it didn't work, like I feel pretty confident we can kind of be right back where we were, and then keep moving forward. And for me, especially like why I started, it's like, I never wanted to be 65 and have that regret. That was like, Christian, you've wanted to open a company since you were 15, right? Or 16 years old in high school. And like, I never wanted to be 65, 70 being like, I don't think I would really, quote unquote, hardcore regret it and just be like sad. But I think there would always be a piece, like a what if piece, right? Like, what if I opened a company and it's successful? Or what if I did things the right way and was a Christian business owner and led a faith-based company and that type of thing. So that was my big kind of if and why, was just because I really feel like I never want to be 70 years old and be like, have that just thing in the back of your mind. I don't think it'd be a big regret, but it'd be more like, well, what if you actually did that and you made a difference this way?
Sure. But you know what you just named too is that you had the desire, the seed was there. And I think for those of us that are going to make these moves and be entrepreneurs, the seed's already been there. You just have to listen to it, right? Like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think I even struggled with it before opening. Like, do I really want to go after this? Because it is such a commitment. And I think there's people out there that see after 11 years and the company sells and they see that piece and they're like, I want to be a business owner.
Right.
But they want to be a business owner because they want either the publicity or they want the Ferrari or whatever it is. They just want to say like, I'm a business owner, whatever it is. But there is, I mean, that is literally the tip of the iceberg, as you know, right? Like the 99 other percent is like the fact that I got up at 5 a.m. this morning and was working before my 7:30 and then had another meeting and then we're recording this podcast and then, that type of thing. So I think it's so cool. And I think it's so cool anytime anyone steps out. And I think it's really honorable what you're doing, Tina. Anyone who steps out with faith background and someone who kind of puts that in the forefront. I know that's something that I want to do personally. And I admire that. And obviously admire taking the jump and congratulations so much on building it to what it is today.
Thank you.
I know it wasn't an easy journey, but it's cool to look, like I said, from the outside in and at the journey. Someone who's known you for the last 3-4 years and see the success. So congratulations on that. Last question I'll ask. We've talked about some really good different stories, and I'm sure it's reminiscent of you. Talk to me about right now, 2023 Fig Tree. Is there anything you guys are specifically doing or anything like that?
Yes. So we really need counselors. We need master's level therapists who really want to counsel from a biblical perspective, and also integrate psychodynamic interventions like EMDR. We will train you. We will pay for your supervision. We have awesome compensation packages. We are just really looking for the right people.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I know I have a couple friends that currently work for you and really enjoy it. So,
awesome. Thank you, Christian. Thank you for referring them to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We'll love what you're doing over there. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. Can't wait to continue our relationship.
Thank you, Christian.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for listening to this episode of Richmond Entrepreneur. As always, if you have a friend who's an entrepreneur, founder, CEO, aspiring entrepreneur, maybe wants to open up a cleaning company on the side, please feel free to refer, shout us out on social media as we expand into the Richmond market. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Lighthouse Labs. Lighthouse Labs is the premier nationally recognized startup accelerator here in Virginia. Lighthouse Labs has accelerated more than 95 companies, investing over $2 million to date of equity-free money. Their 11-week program for high-growth startups helps founders move fast, expand their market, and test their business with the support of mentors, industry experts, investors, support services, office space, and $20,000 of that seed funding at 0% equity. I've met some of their mentors, and let me tell you, some good people over there. For more information or to make a donation investing in the lives of founders, visit lighthouselabsrva.com.